In this lesson, we're going to examine how to use for loops with tuples. And in all honesty, working with tuples is very similar to working with lists, but we'll still go through the process just so you can see how it looks. So we're going to start a new program. We'll call it for tuples.py. So the first thing we'll do is create a tuple of 5 numbers, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. This time, rather than just display the numbers, let's call that numbers instead of number. We'll compute the sum. And we'll also print each number. And then we'll print sum is plus string sum. And let's run this first program. So we'll save. We'll leave it open because we're going to use it again. And we'll type for tuples.py. And there are numbers, and the sum is 15, which is correct. So let's comment out this code, and let's look at another example using strings. Clearly, working with tuples is exactly like working with lists. So let's look at a different example and just demonstrate how to compute with tuples and for loops. What we're going to do is we're going to create a tuple of words. We'll display the words first. Let's run that code. Let's clear the screen. So there are our words. Then we want to figure out which word is the longest. So to do that, we're going to compare the lengths of each word as we go through the list. But what we need to do is we need to identify the word that's the longest. So what we're going to do is we're going to use indexed access into the tuple. And we're going to create a variable max and assign it the index position 0. So we're going to assume that the first word in the tuple is the longest word. Then we're going to create a range starting at 1 through the length of the tuple words. And then we're going to do a comparison. So we're going to say if the len of words sub I is greater than the len of words sub max, in other words, the 0th position, then max becomes that index value. And that's all we have to do. Then we'll say print the longest word is plus words sub max. So what's going to happen is that we're going to assume that now is the longest word. That assumption was made when we set max equals 0. Then we'll look at is and compare its length to now. It's not the longest, so max will not change. Then we'll go to time. The length of time is longer than the length of now. So now max will become that value, which will be 2. So right here, max will be assigned 2. Then we'll compare the next word, the, which is not longer than time. So max will end up at 2. Then when we print the longest word, this value will be word sub 2, which will be time. So let's save the program. Clear the screen. And there's our result. So this for loop is just a very typical way to find a maximum value in a sequence of elements by assigning the first element to be the maximum value and then performing a comparison of each subsequent value and then replacing the value of max with an index if, indeed, some other element is larger than the initial element that was assigned by default. So that wraps up this lesson on for loops and tuples, and we're ready to move to the next lesson where we're going to examine the use of for loops with dictionaries.